Oh my gosh, it feels so good to be picking up a microphone. Today we are talking about getting let down. The feeling when you want someone to be something for you, but they don't show up in that way. The feeling when you get disappointed because your expectations weren't met. Essentially, expecting someone to be X when they can only give you Y. And so I want to share my motto with you today, which is high standards, low expectations. Okay. And my argument today, I have two. My first argument, you cannot make someone be who you want them to be for you. You cannot make someone show up for you in a certain way. That's argument one. Argument two is that the reason we get upset and feel disappointment is because of the projections we put on another person. So in essence, when we expect something from someone and they don't deliver, the reason we're disappointed is because we had that expectation in the first place. High standards, low expectations. Okay, so that is what we're talking about today. And really, this conversation is for anyone feeling maybe misaligned in certain relationships. Maybe you're struggling to find a partnership that feels authentic and healthy. Maybe some of your friendships aren't feeling aligned. You know, it really can be about different relationships. I've definitely struggled in different areas of my life in terms of relationships and, you know, getting let down, feeling disappointed. And ultimately, I really do believe that letting go of certain expectations and trying to make people show up for you in a certain way allows you to just kind of let life flow. And when people disappoint you, it's a little bit less of a burden, or it's a little bit less heavy. So for the first part of this conversation, I want to talk about the fact that I believe healthy relationships have open communication. So depending on who it is you're thinking of right now, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a potential love interest, maybe it's a relationship with, a family member. I think that it's important to share with someone in your life how you feel, how you like to give and receive love, express when things aren't feeling good. I've had friendships where I'm like, hey, I feel like you're not showing up for me. Can we talk about this? Or, am I expecting too much to want this from you? Is that too much from where you are in your life right now, right? So I think it's important to have open communication about what you want from the people in your life. And I guess this is kind of going along with the standards part. What are the standards that you have for people in your life? But it's important to keep in mind that that doesn't mean that they will show up in that way. And you can't force someone to show up in that way, right? So for example, early on in a new relationship, maybe you're having a conversation about feelings of uncertainty or doubt, or sharing your love languages, which I think is important. How do you like to give and receive love? And do we align on that? And, if you say, hey, this is really important to me. Words of affirmation are really important for me in a partnership, okay? And once that's been communicated, I think we need to look at it as the other person can make a choice either to show up in that way or not. And if they choose not to, which is what often leads to disappointment, then it's our expectations we put on them not being met, right? And I think this is where there's this line of high standards, low expectations of hey, this is what I need. And if you can't give that to me, then this isn't going to work. And I think it's really being okay with walking away from something that isn't aligned for you. Okay. And I think about this phrase, if he wanted to, he would. And I do agree with this to an extent, because if anyone wanted to, they would. If they want to show up for you, they will. If they want to be in your life, they will. However, I think early on it's important to communicate how you want people to show up for you, because some people, for example, hate receiving flowers. This is an example. Some people don't like gifts. Receiving gifts makes them uncomfortable. They don't like it. So if someone new in a new relationship is like giving them all these gifts and flowers, they might actually really be turned off by that and be like, oh my gosh, I really don't like this. So in the whole, if he wanted to, he would. I think it's like, it's important to establish that communication of what you want and what you're looking for. And then at that point, if they want to, and if they have the capacity to show up in that way for you, they will. Okay? And I think that is an important kind of distinction. Example from my personal life is a relationship that I have with one of my good friends. Okay? We are like soul sisters. I love this girl. We were friends for a long time before we became really, really close. And now she's one of my favorite people to talk to. But we don't talk very often. And I will often text her like these big paragraphs. And it will take her a few days to respond. And I know that about her. And recently, actually, I did this. And she reached out and said, hey, I'm so sorry that this is taking me a long time to respond to. I hope you know how important your friendship is to me, but I want to respond when I have the actual capacity to. But I do want to get better at responding a little more timely, even when things are busy. So I just love that she said that, and it kind of was like a perfect example for this episode because, you know, she said in her message, I love that it doesn't affect the way we communicate. Like sometimes I'll reach out to her twice. If she doesn't respond, I'll just reach out again. And I know some people will, well, if they wanted to, they would. If she was a good friend, she would reach out. And yes, you know, but also like it's just our friendship and we have a good dynamic, and I don't doubt for a second that she's my friend. In that way, it's like I'm okay with that dynamic. But if I wanted her to be the type of friend who responded right away and I needed her to really, you know, I had a standard for her to be like, you need to reply the same day I text you, okay? And if I expect that from her and she can't deliver, I'm disappointed because of the expectation I put on her. Okay, does this make sense? But like, we have this open communication, and I don't ever doubt for a second that she's not my true friend or whatever. So I guess what I'm trying to say with this whole healthy relationships thing, I think it's important for you to communicate how you feel, but you at the same time, you shouldn't have to beg someone to show up for you in a certain way. Like if you've said, this is really important to me, you know, time and time has gone on and they don't show up in that way, then you shouldn't have to beg for it. And that maybe that's just not a person that's like aligned for you, and you need to let go of that expectation. And if they're not meeting a standard, then it's time to walk away. And I think that that's okay. And I think the earlier you can communicate how you feel is you can walk away from something if it's not aligned, feeling sound, knowing that like, okay, I put my effort in and I genuinely tried to be a good communicator. And I think that that can give you peace. Whereas if you bottle things up and never communicate how you feel, you might end up regretting not trying to communicate that. Because on one hand, the other person might genuinely not know that something is important to you. So if you said it, then they know, and then it's on them to either show up in that way or not. But if you communicate it, at least you know you've ticked your boxes and you've said your piece, okay? I hope you're still with me. I haven't recorded in a while and I'm feeling a little nervous today. Okay, so I want to talk now about the whole high standards, low expectations kind of philosophy. So I think it's important to determine and think about the level of respect that you expect from people in your life. Okay, so think of it as like a line. What is your bare minimum from relationships in your life? And this might look different between like a relationship and a friendship, whatever. But what's your bare minimum? Okay, someone who takes days and days to reply to a text, especially if it's like a love interest, someone who's super wishy-washy with plans, they're super last minute, whatever. Like to me, all of these are under my bare minimum of what I expect. And for me, if you don't hit my bare minimum, you don't get a reply. Okay, this is not worth my time. And especially in like a friendship, I think you have to be careful with this one because it's like, A friendship that's established, yeah, maybe one time I just talked about a friend who takes so long to reply. But again, we have built a relationship that we are both happy with. But you kind of have to think about, what is my bare minimum? What are my standards? That if this person is here or above, they meet my standards. And then you can go above and beyond, which is great. We would love people to have the initiative to go above and beyond and really show up for you. But you have to have a bare minimum, because I think if you love yourself and you respect yourself, you have a bare minimum. You do not let people walk all over you. You do not let people take advantage of you. You do not let people, just treat you however they want to treat you. Like, that's not okay. Okay, so this is the whole high standards part, is you know what you deserve, you know what you want, you know what you're looking for, and you're not afraid to walk away from anyone that doesn't meet those standards. But the low expectations part comes in with this idea that you cannot force someone to be what you want them to be. Okay, and I love this quote. This helps me with this a lot. Give yourself permission to be yourself and allow others to be different. So I think it's truly better to kind of let go, loosen your grip a little bit on what you expect from the other person, and let them show you who they are. So if we go back to this whole idea of communication, let's say you're in a new relationship and you've communicated what love languages are really important to you. You've communicated that, hey, this happened and I didn't love your reaction. Can we talk about it? You've communicated those things. And now you're letting go. You're saying, I have communicated how I feel, and now I'm going to let go, and I'm going to let this person show me how they can show up for me, right? Because you can't beg someone. You shouldn't have to say every week you're telling them the same thing. Hey, you never compliment me, or hey, you never do this, or hey, I need this from you. Like, you can't force someone to be what you want them to be. Right? Sometimes it's just not a good fit. Sometimes they just don't care enough. Sometimes they just have trouble showing up in that way and it's just not aligned. It could be for a million reasons. I don't even think the reason itself is that important. I think it's more about, can you let go, and can you let them show you who they are? And if who they truly are and what they're offering you doesn't meet your standards, then you can loosen your grip and walk away. Because when you hold on to things so tightly, you're like, I need this to work. I need this guy to be the guy. I need this friend to show up for me in this way. I need my friend to text me back within hours that I text her. And if I'm holding on to that so tightly, it feels really negative, because you're coming from a place of lack. You're coming from a place of, if they can't be this for me, then I'm not enough on my own, almost. So in that way, I think when we have high standards of respect that we want to be treated, and we can communicate what we need and want, and then we can relax, let go, and let the person show you who they are, because if they wanted to, they would. I also genuinely feel that if you love and respect yourself and you feel like you've shown up as your best self, as loving as you can, then you can be at peace with letting people show you who they are. You're not putting this pressure on people to be what you want them to be. Often that's when we get disappointed, right? It's because you think something should be this or could be, right? We get so caught up in our head about the could be's and the should be's and the would be's, and it's classic too. For example, meet someone, maybe you get excited about it. And I think you should feel excitement in your life, but sometimes this excitement leads us to really thinking about the potential of things. We get excited about what could happen or the future you might have. And really, it leads us to this disappointment because we're kind of in our fantasy land rather than looking at what's actually happening right in front of us. And so I think this piece of really letting go and letting someone show you, how they can show up for you, rather than like really begging for it or coming from this lack of needing it, putting this pressure on it, because then that doesn't feel authentic. And They might pretend to be who you want them to be for a while, but that's probably not going to last either. How I choose to look at relationships and friendships right now in my life, first of all, I want to say this can definitely be easier said than done. I think it's normal to feel disappointment. It's normal to imagine what could be. It's normal to, be a little bit sad if something doesn't work out. Like, that's all totally normal. But I think in general, if we can try to have this philosophy of being okay with walking away, loosening your grip, right? You don't need to hold so tightly onto things and people, because the people who want to be in your life will be there. I'm going to say it again. The people who want to be in your life will be there. They will show up. And so you don't need to hold on to them so tightly. And I think ultimately what happens is when you hold on so tightly to things, you're coming from this negative place, you actually end up creating more friction and more worry and fear, right? It's all fear-based to be like, I need this to work out this way. So if you can let go, allow someone to show you who they are, and really reflect on, is this what I want? I think sometimes we can get so in our heads about like, you think you want someone in your life, but then the way they're showing up for you is actually not what your standards are, right? But because you've grown attached to the person, you let things slide or you let things go that don't meet your standards. And then suddenly you're like, wow, this sucks. Like, this isn't what I want. But I think it's like important to reflect on, is the way this person's showing up for me what I deserve and what I want, right? You can't come from a place of, what can I do to make them like me? It's, are they showing up in a way that aligns with what I am looking for, right? So you can flip that script and be okay with walking away from something that's not for you. I also think if someone is not giving you what you want, like, why would you want them? Why would you want that? If you have a friend who cancels on you every single time you make plans, are you sure that's your friend? Is that the type of person you want in your life? It's like we want to prove that we're good enough to be shown up for by making them do it. When in reality, it's better and easier to find new people that actually want to be in your life. So letting go, really, it's about letting go what isn't actually serving you, and that's making space for what is meant for you. Okay, and I think this is the way that I look at it that's really helpful when things don't work out is, you know what, it just wasn't meant for me and I wasn't meant for them, and that's okay. And it doesn't have to be this huge disappointment. And I do want to say, there are going to be times in your life where you feel disappointment. Okay, like I'm not saying we can completely eliminate it, but I just think in general, when we can let go a little bit and say, all is well, this too shall pass, what is meant for me will find me. Like, if you can really start to believe that the things that are meant for you will find you, it can make it easier to let go of the people that we thought and expected to be in our life longer than they actually are. I think I'm going to contradict myself a little bit in the next little portion here, but something I want to be mindful of is other people's situations. Because on one hand, like we've talked about, yes, the people who want to be in your life will show up. But on the other hand, sometimes people go through a lot of stuff. Sometimes people are going through hard times. They might be having mental health struggles. They might be really, really busy. They might just be having a hard time with something right now and super focused on that. And so while I think that people who want to make space for you will, and I do believe that, I think sometimes people are genuinely having a rough go. And I think this is something I really tolerate more so in my friendships. Like if I have a friend who, I think I'm at a good place in my friendships, and I'm thankful for that, where if I have a friend who's not able to respond to me right away, I'm lucky that they'll usually tell me. I have a friend, I was looking for feedback on something, and she just said, hey, I had a really rough day. I'm going to try to look at this tomorrow. And for me, that's like, okay, I appreciate her saying that rather than just kind of ghosting and just not hearing from her. But I can be mindful of, yeah, you had a really rough go or you're dealing with something right now. So I can understand that you can't get back to me right away. And that's okay. So in that way, I'm saying like you shouldn't necessarily abandon someone right away. If someone doesn't meet your standards one time, does it mean you cut them off? I mean, I think it depends on the situation. So when I say loosen your grip, I mean let them be themselves and know that you'll be okay with or without them. And sometimes things take a little time to get into a groove, but I think it should always feel like the relationship is important to the other person, right? If at any time you just feel like, okay, this doesn't matter to you at all, then that's maybe a bigger question of maybe we're just not supposed to be in each other's lives. So I think we should be mindful that people go through things and are busy, but ultimately if they want to be in your life, they will communicate that with you. And if they can't show up for you in a certain way, they'll at least let you know. And if they don't, they probably don't want to be in your life that much, or they don't care enough to show up for you in a way you deserve, then that's not meeting your standards. Let it go and you'll be okay. So really quick, let's get into a couple tips for letting go. Because I talked a lot about loosening your grip, letting go, let people be themselves, let people show you who they are, and be okay with walking away. But maybe easier said than done. So something that really helps me is coming back to the present moment when I start to spiral. So if I'm questioning something about a relationship in my life and I'm feeling really negative about it, that's when my mind starts spiraling of like, oh, well, they did this. And you start recounting almost like, well, 2 months ago, this happened and that should have been your first red flag, or this and this and this, or, why isn't my friend replying to me? Did I do something to them? Are they upset with me? And are they, whatever. Like there's so many scenarios our mind can start running. And that's usually not helpful because that's our ego trying to sort through everything, and it doesn't help. Going on a little spiral when you're feeling unsure about something doesn't help. So I come back to the present moment. The way I do this is I take deep breaths. I sink into where I am in this exact moment. For example, I am here, microphone in hand, recording a podcast. In this moment, I am okay. I like to go for walks and not think about anything in particular. Just like imagine your thoughts are clouds and let them drift by. Don't hold on to any one thought that you need to dig into. Just let them drift. Another tip for letting go is accepting that disappointment is a part of life. And you know what? I rather feel it and know that I can move forward versus never getting excited about things. Because this is a whole argument of like, oh, don't get too excited because you're going to get disappointed. But I think that excitement is a great feeling. And so the way I look at it is, if someone doesn't meet my standards, it might feel a little disappointing, or I might need to stop putting expectations on them. And yeah, that might be upsetting, but just knowing, I can get through it, and knowing that I want people in my life who want to be there. I think this is a big thing. I don't want someone in my life who doesn't really care to be there. If you don't recognize how awesome of a friend I am, or how, wonderful of a person I am to be around, yes, I'm hyping myself up. If you don't feel that way about me, then I don't want you in my life, because I surround myself with people who do feel that way, who enjoy my friendship, who love me for who I am. So I don't want to change myself for somebody. And I don't want to force you to like me. Are you kidding? Like, just think of it that way for a second. Ew. Why am I putting energy into trying to make a guy like me? Why am I putting in energy to force a friend to be the type of friend they can't be for me? Like, what is that ultimately doing? That is a waste of time. If you don't want to be there in my life, then I don't really want you there. I don't have space for you. So I think just looking at it from an empowerment lens, I like repeating the affirmation to myself. I give myself permission to be myself, and I allow others to be different. Allowing people to be who they are is the most important thing you can do in interpersonal relationships, because everybody is different. Every single person is different. People are not going to be exactly who you want them to be all the time. And this is where it's like, we have to be mindful of people's situations. We have to learn to let go. We have to have standards for ourselves. And we have to reflect, because sometimes you don't realize things are happening in a relationship, and then you get to a point where you're like, oh, I'm a little bit deeper into this than I anticipated, and this is not what I want, or this is not going in the direction that, feels right for me. So I think just ultimately learning to love yourself enough to let go, learning to love yourself enough to move forward and to say, I don't need this particular person in my life. It might be painful if I had one of my best friends be like, yeah, I don't want to be your friend anymore. Yes, it would hurt, okay? But ultimately, I know I would be okay. And I've done a lot of work to get myself to this place of, hey, I love myself and I want to be with people, around people who want to be there. Okay? Letting go of the person who's not for you is going to open up space for you to meet someone who is for you. And, again, the people who want to be there will be there. And if you feel disappointment, this too shall pass. I believe that everything you're meant to experience is a chance to learn and grow, especially if you choose to look at it that way. And with that, I'm going to end this here. I hope you have a beautiful week, and I will chat with you very soon. Bye.